because it's what we've always done. Because I want my kids to get a good moral foundation. Because I was hurting, and I was looking for hope. Because I really liked the community. If someone were to ask me when I was a kid why I come to worship, I would have said, because my parents made me. As a teenager, I might have said, well, because my friends are here. And on my worst day, as an adult, you might find me thinking, because it's my job. There are all sorts of reasons for why we come to worship. We live in a hurting and anxious world, and a lot of us come to escape it for a while. Maybe we have questions about that world and our lives that the culture's myriad of quick fix solutions haven't answered very well for us. And so we come here. And many of us come back again and again to this place to worship because somewhere down the line, Jesus took up residence deep within our bones. And we haven't quite been able to shake him. We have all sorts of reasons for worshiping. But ultimately, every one of these reasons has one thing in common. They're pretty self-focused. Worship becomes about us. All of the reasons that I just said presume that worship is primarily about giving us something we need to make our lives a little bit more whole. Not to mention, they also presume that worship basically takes place in a building that looks a bit like this one. You don't often hear people say, I come to worship to learn to think about somebody other than myself, and to give myself and my desires up to a group of people that I've chosen to be my community. We don't hear that. Now, I can hear some of you sort of thinking, well, that's just not true. I come here to worship. I give to others. I love people as best I can. I put money in the plate I give. It's not about me. Not really. That's kind of true. But even the most noble among us, even those who say we come to worship because we want to learn to live holier lives, often still reduce holy living to a personal quest to make our lives a little bit easier, if not in the immediate, then by obtaining some final heavenly reward. We still treat worship as if it's something that will primarily benefit us in some way. It's not all our fault for thinking about worship in this way. In fact, it's almost habitual. We don't even realize most of the time that we're doing it. There are so many culprits that fuel our self-focused understanding of worship. Televangelists who say that God promises blessing and reward for our faithfulness. If you're faithful, you get blessing and reward. We see giant churches that would literally sell their souls to get media recognition, or to build bigger and better facilities, or have the most rockin' worship team on the face of the planet for no other reason than to just be relevant and to get people in the doors. And then there's our culture. A culture that the Corinthians for their foul behavior, their self-centered behavior, and he says, "You're God's temple. The Spirit lives in you. Shape up." We read it as if Paul is talking to the Corinthians and to us as individuals. We interpret this passage and others like it as if it's saying that worship is about our own individual attempt to get things right between us and God. That it's about taking responsibility for building and taking care of God's temple, which is supposed to be growing inside of us. But that's not what Paul is saying here. Paul is speaking to the Corinthians not simply about their actions as individuals, not simply about personal holiness and getting things right between themselves and God. He's talking to them about how their actions affect the community they were building together. Even though the phrase Paul uses, "Do you know that you are God's temple?" even though that sounds like, in English, that Paul is speaking to a singular person, in the original Greek language, he actually uses a plural you. A you-all. A y'all, if you will. Do you know that y'all are God's temple? And God's Spirit dwells here? God's temple is holy and y'all are it. Paul is reminding this struggling community that their lives of worship are not simply about entering a building together for an hour a week and learning to do individual good for individual gain. Worship is about building a community for the Spirit of God to dwell in. Now we know from Acts 2 that those who followed Jesus were asked to build communities that were quite different from the rest of the world. It was unprecedented, really, to share everything they had with one another, to break bread together every day, to live together, to praise God and pray together, to sell their homes and their possessions for the sake of redistributing it throughout the community so everyone would have enough. That was unprecedented. The community of God under Jesus Christ was being asked to do something so wildly new from what they were used to share. Jesus was asking them to take themselves out of the center of their own lives and to put someone else there instead. That's what worshiping God is all about. Building community. And when Paul first came around with these ideas, that sounded good. Together, the Corinthians would have more than anything they could attain for themselves as individuals. Paul even says that here at the end of the verses we read, all things belong to us, and we belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. As individuals, the Corinthians might not have had it all, but together they would never go without. They craved relationships like this, where they would take care of one another and give to one another, and no one would ever be without. So they signed up. Who wouldn't sign up for a community like that? But it wasn't long before they realized that having it all in community really does mean sometimes not having it all as individuals. In community, they wouldn't always get what they want, because sometimes someone else needed it more. Because sometimes someone in the community would make a choice to steal from someone else, would hurt another person in the community. Sometimes they wouldn't always get what they wanted in community, because sometimes the community couldn't agree on what to do with their shared possessions. Community actually required a tremendous amount of responsibility must choose with care how to build on this foundation. Paul is saying we are all builders. The Corinthians were all builders, and they had to discern how they were going to build this community. Well, when the Corinthians realized that this is what they'd signed up for, they began to withdraw. They started fending for themselves. This is too much. The Corinthians, they're not much different from the rest of us in the human race. We know what it feels like to crave community, to crave relationships that will love us and take care of us and put us first. We seek it out in all kinds of ways, through technology, through the church, community groups, family relationships. It's why some of us have kids and others of us have neighborhood block parties. It's why we celebrate democracy. We know that life together is better. We know cognitively that life together is better in relationship than in isolation. We know cognitively that decisions are better when they're made together and not alone. And yet we also know that this type of community, the type that Jesus was calling us to, is so very different from the easy, quick fix communities of the world that put us at the center of our own lives. Community is hard. And when it becomes too much to handle, when we bump heads with one another, when we're confronted with the fact that other people's choices affect us and our choices affect others, when we realize that being in community cannot be about exercising our own rights or our own power or our own authority, because sometimes what community means is sacrificing those things for the sake of another person. When we realize that community is all about that, we start having second thoughts about the whole community thing. And just like the Corinthians, we jockey for control. We fight over who should make the decisions. We put our own needs before each other. We cheat our neighbors out of dignity and security and love and possessions. And then, when community breaks down, we make excuses for why we're not the ones to blame. I listened to a podcast this week by a man named Anil Dash. And he's an inventor in the technology world. He's the CEO of Fog Creek Software and the nonprofit organization Expert Labs, which is a science research initiative that worked with some of the previous administrations in the White House. And he said that technology companies have really paved the way for cutting-edge, brand-new technology that ushers us into a new way of life and being in relationship with one another in the world, a new community. And the people who get into the tech industry, they really believe that their work is important because they believe that it has the capacity to create better communities, more meaningful interaction, the sharing of information, true democracy between people. People who get into the tech industry really believe that. And when their technology does that, they're really quick to take all the accolades. But we all know, in dealing with technology on a daily basis, that technology doesn't always work in this ideal way. It doesn't always create good community and true democracy and the sharing of information, it's not always good for people. Sometimes it gets used for ill. People yell at each other over Facebook. Or human beings are so inundated with information that they cannot possibly care about all of the things going on in the world because it's just too much. It's not that they're bad people. They literally just can't handle it. Their brains can't process it. And so we shut down. Organizations and countries, we hear about it all the time, using technology to go to war with one another. And when these things happen, and Neil says that tech creators tend to distance themselves from the problem. No. I just created a piece of technology. I just put a product out there. You have to decide how you're going to use it. And Neil has decided that he's going to spend the better half of his technology career as a pretty young guy advocating for the fact that because tech companies have created this new community, they've created new ways of human relationships, that tech companies have an ethical responsibility to think about how to create technology that creates generative relationships, that enables people to actually use technology for good. He's saying that these tech companies, they have this responsibility because they've brought about and built this new community, and they're bringing us all along. He illustrates this by telling a story, which I find fascinating, of something that happened very recently in our culture. He talks about a news source that on their homepage the night of the election created this meter where you could see in real time the election results coming in. And it went back and forth like this between the two candidates. And he said that he could almost see the people in this tech company sitting around this whiteboard with empty coffee cups 3 months prior and saying, "This will be awesome. We could get the poll data in real time, and it would be so compelling." And Anil said that as somebody who's a coder, as somebody who does coding websites, he said that when you looked at the website, the meter never stopped moving. That it went back and forth between the two candidates all night long. But if you actually looked at the code on the website, you realized it was all fake. Because the data actually only processed every few minutes. And so really, the meter should have looked like this. But it never stopped moving. And the problem, Anil said, with this, is not that these people are bad people. He wasn't trying to dog on the tech industry. They are probably young, brilliant mathematicians and coders and website geniuses that have never taken an ethics class in their life. And they're on the cutting edge of technology, so they've never seen this stuff play out before in this unprecedented new community. They don't know. But what Anil said was they have a responsibility to think about what that does to communities of people. Because the first thing it does is it creates anxiety through the roof. And we know that we don't act appropriately as human beings when we experience anxiety. And the second thing that it did was it created a fascination, a fixation, a spectacle of data. Data that wasn't even real. All of us in community have responsibility. As Christ's followers, in many ways, we are also living and learning in real time. when we enter into relationships with one another. When we become a part of a neighborhood or a church community or even in our families, we are living in uncharted waters and trying to learn what it means to love one another as best we can. The Corinthians were also living in real time, in unprecedented, charted waters. They had never experienced community like this before, the kind that Christ called them to live completely countercultural to the way the world was calling them to live, because real community, the kind that gives and sacrifices and loves and decenters ourselves, that's hard. But choosing choosing to worship Jesus, means choosing to prioritize community and discerning how best to build it together. The temple of God isn't something that just resides in us, and it isn't a building. Jesus' message of salvation was much more cosmic than that. Jesus' message of salvation was not just about the redemption of you and me. It starts with you and me. But it is so much bigger. And it happens as we learn to live in a community that cares not just for ourselves, but for everyone else. That's worship. And our community is God's temple. We must learn to build it.